So I'm going to share something personal. I'm learning how to be a good parent because I'm a first-time mom, and that's the most important role. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about on spot in most cases.
Oh, okay, that sounds like a lifelong journey. Okay, my second question is, what's the one personal habit that has helped you in your career or life? Similar question that we were listening from our members about.
I don't know if that could be described as a habit, but I have a kind of a um mindset to be able to say no to things that feel off, even if they look right, even if they sound good, but if they don't fully resonate with something as I would envision for it, I just say no. I don't take partnerships, responsibilities. I don't purchase something. So I try to stick to myself as much as I can. And I think it really helps everywhere, in every aspect
Wow,
of my life.
that's powerful, Kate. There's so much that I want to know about that, but maybe after the rapid fire round. My third question is, how would you describe your approach to learning design and performance enhancement?
It's always business impact first. Like there should be some outcome I actually want to achieve. And it's probably just my consulting brain talking,
Hmm,
but everything has to be tied to clear result.
awesome. All right. If you could do one thing that would make learning designers twice as effective, what would that be?
Something that probably will make them even more effective than twice. I'd take them out of the learning and development bubble. If we speak about some corporate world, because my main experience is related to the corporate space. And I don't think that you can ever create something meaningful if you don't feel the problem you are trying to solve. You just need to have a bit of understanding what you are dealing with. So just, you know, try to take that seat on a table with stakeholders, probably hear some sales calls, some ops reviews. Anything will work. Just try to get out of the learning development scope as much as you can.
I love that. Resonates so deeply with me. Yeah. Kate, next question. A crazy or wild learning experience that you designed?
So it all boils down to what kind of experience you can describe as the wild one, because we may have different perceptions of this. But I have one really fun story that's not exactly instructional design related. It was back at the time when I worked as a consultant, and we created a kind of team building experience. It was a full day learning game with some small missions, interactions throughout the day, and it was supposed to be a big surprise in the end. That final step involved a parrot, a real parrot, which was a company's mascot. And when the day that training activity should actually be launched, we arrived at the place and we learned
ఈసారి
that
మన ఇల్లంతా అంధకారం చేసి కూర్చోబెట్టావు.
the parrot had died that morning. So it was a really mad experience. And I think nobody will ever forget about it. We
God.
had to rework everything in the last second.
Oh my God, that sounds terrible.
But no one forgot it though, you know.
All right. That's fun. Okay, my last question, Kate. How would you describe micro learning in just a few words?
um, in just a few words, then it would be quick, of course, clear, actionable, and something that makes you go and do something, not just know something.
Love that. Love that. Okay, that sort of geared us up for the conversation today. And I think those four words that you said, we're going to decipher what they really mean and how do we make that happen, right? Okay. So now you know a little bit about Kate and the wild and the crazy and the deep experiences she designs. Now I'll tell you a little bit about her background for those of you who may not be familiar with her work. So Kate is the founder and the chief product officer at Seven Taps. She's also an instructor for Stanford Technology Training and creator of Microlearning Conference. She's a trailblazer in professional development and workspace learning and is transforming how organizations and educators across the world approach skill development by applying evidence-based approaches to deliver microlearning that drives real behavior change. I think she spoke about a little bit of how behavior change is the last goal and the North Star for her, and we'll explore how she makes that happen. All right. So, Kate, what we're going to do is I have a couple of questions based on your work. And a lot of this comes from, just I've been your follower on LinkedIn for a while, and there's such amazing things that you post about. So I'll share some of the posts and some interesting, images that you sort of posted on your wall, and then ask you the question. All right. So my first question, and this is connected to, let me just share it on screen. Yes, this amazing image that you posted, right? It says, make an instructional designer cry in 3 words. And it says, accommodate learning styles, do your magic, lock the navigation. Can we gamify this a little bit, make it pretty? It's all important, skip the needs analysis. There is no subject matter expert. One quick change, and that change takes like 15 days to make, right? So those are the struggles of an instructional designer. So you spoke about this in your post, and then you said that, yeah, so it's pretty bang on, right? So what we'd love to know is, what were the pain points that you wanted to address when you were building 7TAPS? So were they connected to this, beyond this? What were the pain points that you wanted to address? And how has 7TAPS been able to address them? And for those who may not be familiar with what 7TAPS is, maybe just give them a little brief, and then, yeah.
Well, starting from the final part of the question, 7TAPS is a platform for quick launch microlearning experiences. And I'd say it's a performance enablement platform that is a microlearning platform in disguise. As I've already mentioned, my end goal is always a behavior change, a business impact, and we tried to make the platform work for solutions, for situations when a company needs to get that behavioral change at scale. And of course, when we started building 7TAPS, to some extent, we were trying to solve the real pain points behind those jokes. Actually, this post got lots of love on LinkedIn, and we even turned it into a sticker pack, and it's still one of the most favorite swag on our conference and events. People really love it because it resonates with so many folks in the industry. And I wouldn't blame only tools for these pain points, because the tool is just the resource you have, and there's a lot of work before you try to actually create something and deliver it to your learners. But at the time we started 7TAPS, I personally worked on the mockups. I'd say most of the tools were optimized to build long and in many cases beautiful, but still long content. And it was almost impossible to build something actionable, something useful. Of course, you can create anything you want if you have that skill. But again, from my consulting experience, not many instructional design teams, not many learning and development teams actually have that skill, especially when they need to work. I'm sorry for the noise.
We can hear with the background noise, Kate.
And I think that 99% of learning development teams work under pressure. I'm not that familiar with educational space. We work with a few institutions, but in the corporate space, it's always something super paced, and you always need something should have done yesterday. So with 7TAPS, we just try to address those constraints and pressure, and try to help companies, organizations achieve something with shorter sessions, with something mobile first, of course, with no barriers for your learners, and with clarity, because the platform actually forces you to think in a way, what's the one thing you really want your learners to remember or do? Because the format is quite limited in terms of what's the amount of text, for example, you can put on your cards, what's the length of media resources you can use in your microlearning asset. So we try to help companies go from the content first mindset to performance first mindset. And I don't know if we have any 7TAPS users here today with us, but from what I hear from our clients, it just resonated a lot. And now people from various organizations tell us they can deploy something in a day. Like they actually respond to business needs in a way that their stakeholders ask them to respond. And that's probably the biggest impact I've seen. I can be
Let's-
easily carried away while talking about 7 times. Just feel free to interrupt me.
No, not at all. And in fact, we've accessed a lot of, so our advisor, and you know her very well, Nidhi Sachdeva, is a big advocate of 7 taps, and she keeps talking about how addictive it is to actually design learning experiences on 7 taps. It's so quick and it sort of, and this thing that you said about the platform forcing you to design in a certain way, similar to conversations we have in education, I guess there's a lot of educators here, but also in architecture about how the space sort of forces some or is conducive to certain kinds of interactions. So if your class is designed in a way that there's a teacher chair in front and then there are rows and rows of students, it's automatically going to be a one-way conversation. But if the structure of the class is designed in a way that there's small tables and students gathered around it, it's automatically going to be more conducive for peer learning, right? So it's a similar conversation, how a platform can sort of determine what kind of interaction happens. And it's funny that we are in this age, of AI and stuff. There's just such innovations happening even in the field of learning, learning technologies. But I know as a consultant, we're trying to design some interactive modules for young people in suburbs of India, and just struggling with platforms that won't allow question in the same page as a video, right? A question or a quiz is a separate page. So it's sort of forcing you to, consume content first and then get into like sort of what you call summative assessment. So learn first and then reflect. But learning only happens through reflection. So, I mean, it's funny that even at this time, one is still struggling with those kind of platforms that learning science would just, outrightly challenge. So thanks a ton for talking about that. And I personally recommend anyone who's not seen 7 taps to just explore that fantastic platform. Kit, my second question is really about microlearning, right? You've said that before. It's not really about time. It's not about whether microlearning should be a 30-second thing or a 15-minute thing. What is it really about? So can you tell us what the hallmark of good microlearning are, and share maybe some examples of some good learning, but also some bad microlearning? Perhaps that will help us understand.
Yeah, sure. Definitely, that should be, entitled somewhere that microlearning is never about duration, because a 5-minute video can be painfully bloated. One-page instruction can be painfully bloated. It all boils down to focus and function. And as I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, it should be one actionable idea. It should be designed to help somebody solve a problem that actually exists, or at least they should start realizing they have that problem. And again, it's some action behind that perception change. And there is a quick test I always recommend to our customers. If your learner cannot answer, what am I meant to do differently after clicking through this, after going through this, it's not microlearning. It's just short form of content, which is quite different. It's not bad. Sometimes it's what you probably are aiming for, but it's not microlearning. And do you recall any experience, any training in your life? And probably every attendee of our session can also think about it. When you kind of sit through it and felt that it was really longer than it needed to be. Like there must have been some quickie guide, some quickie instruction, but I'm sitting at this webinar just wasting my time when I could have actually go and do something. And many people actually have had this experience. I certainly have. And the problem with that kind of experience is that you don't simply waste it, you didn't simply waste time, but you probably didn't recall anything out of that. You didn't apply anything out of that. That's the problem. And microlearning, if we consider the whole scenario, is not about making things short. It's about making things stick. So if we speak about today's session, probably I won't, make everyone's here microlearning experts. It does not happen over one webinar, of course, but probably next time you are going to design something micro, you will think about focus, you will think about some action in build. Hopefully you will think about some problem involved you are trying to solve, and probably, hopefully, you will think about your learner who will be equipped to go and do something. That's what's make microlearning good, effective. And if we speak about some examples, something that happened just recently with one of our clients. It was a retail company, and they wanted to improve the onboarding experience for the store representatives. Initially, they had a 30-minute video with all the main points covered, but they decided to turn it into a series of micro interventions. Each day, people get something focused on one customer scenario. And as a result, they said that the store managers actually saw fewer questions like, what do I say if the customer asks something, after day 3 of such an experience. So because of this format, when the knowledge and skills were delivered in a spaced approach, it was some guide inbuilt. It was some example of how you should respond to this customer. It was about some signals that this customer may be annoyed, or there must be something you need to address. They finally showed better performance as a result. And that's the impact I, as a founder of a microlearning company, care about. And that would be an impact I, as a founder of not just a microlearning software company, but just a company as it is, because I also lead processes. I also help our sales teams to achieve better results. It's all about some behavior change at the end of the day. And the worst microlearning experiences, I cannot say probably they are worst, but they are ineffective. They are all about when instructional designers try to slice up something longer into pieces. It does not work that way, because you actually end up with your original learning objectives just sliced into pieces. Probably a good comparison would be if you slice up a book into chapters. Kind of all in all, it still will be that book, right? Microlearning means that initially you start with that mindset that every intervention should be about one single action, one single goal, instruction, like it should be actionable all by itself.
That's a very nuanced difference you're making, Kate. Thanks. So you're saying one, I mean, in the example again, you're saying instead of generally, organizations would create one training program on, let's say, sales. And here you're talking about how 7 taps was used to talk about one kind of like customer problem. What if the customer asks this or they're behaving like this? How do you solve that? So you're focusing on one thing at a time, and then it's also spaced. So you're not giving all the information at one, and how that would be more impact.
I just recalled one more good example. If
Okay.
we have people from traditional education here, there was a 7 taps user who actually worked on it was kind of a study skills course for first year students. And initially they had a course that was about productivity, effectiveness, time management, and they were not really satisfied with the results, and the engagement was quite low. So they decided to turn it into a microlearning series. And it was quite a creative approach, actually. They started sending out those 7 taps materials. And now I'm not telling about it as the founder of the platform trying to promote it. You can actually use emails. You can use any resources you are already using when communicating with your learners. But you can imagine this. On day 1, they get something like, it's Monday. What's one thing that you can get out of the way today to make your Friday easier? And there were some examples of what it could be. The next day, on Tuesday, they could receive something like, here is a breakdown of how our top students go through big assignments. Want to try it with yours next time? So you see, it was something very tailored to their world. It was light. It was so very personal. And it was all about making students act. Of course, it got high engagement, then some theory of time management that young generation is not really interested in acquiring skills at. So
Love that.
with microlearning, you need just that little push at the right moment
Mm.
with something very snackable and actionable.
I love that example. Love it. And this could be, it could be email, it could be an image, an infographic, a 7-tap lesson. It could be a short video that goes, focusing on one thing at a time and going regularly,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to say before I close this one, another example, Kate, that you mentioned in somewhere, I don't remember, but you were saying skip the welcome to the course learning objective slide and ask something real. So, for instance, how confident are you in leading AI-driven sustainability initiatives? This hooks people and engages their prior knowledge more than stating learning objectives. Like by end of this module, you will be able to do X, Y, Z. So I sort of, that was a very practical tip as well. I'm going to move to another thing that I'm showing another image that I just loved on your LinkedIn. And this one will relate. A lot of instructional designers may connect with this. This is what happens when you let SMEs decide what goes in your training. So this one made me nod and laugh at the same time. I just love this image. So Kate, simple. My question is, how do we get learning designers to move from here's all the content to here's what the learners need to do? So I know you've created a sort of self-checking tool to lead conversations on training content. And can you walk us through some of the key insights and ideas in that tool?
Just in a few words, it's all about trying to realize why you need this particular training, what's behind the training request. If we were to include everything that our subject matter experts ask us to include into training, it will be just continuous training experience, which nobody wants to do. And moreover, if you go to managers of your learners and you ask about their preferences, they will tell you they don't want their people to see it through the training. They want to make it as snackable and as rapid as it could be. So it's kind of always a battle of preferences, and I know it's not that easy to handle those conversations with subject matter experts, and probably that's the reason that I suggested to get learning development people out of the learning development bubble, because when they go and check what's the reality of their learners, what's the business goal their department is trying to achieve, it's never just the topic of the training, right? It's something that should help the business become more effective, efficient. And if that's an educational institution, there is always some action inbuilt. Probably it's not equal to some comprehensive training, academic training, but we still can use some of the ideas when you try to extract what's behind the training request. Can you turn this vague and comprehensive topic into some actionable insights, some decision trees? If you have your subject matter experts, can you ask them for real stories that will be relevant for your learners? Even the example you mentioned about avoiding writing learning objectives in your microlearning asset, because microlearning should be as short as possible. And there's actually no space for introducing something in a way that we are used to when it comes to conventional training. Try to think what's in your learner's world is happening. Share some example. Let them dive into the problem immediately, or sometimes let them realize they have a problem, because in many situations they don't care about the training because they don't feel that they lack some knowledge. You never know what you don't know. And once you do that, everything changes. You just stop copying the subject matter experts slide deck, and you probably start with asking questions like, all right, what would a good decision look like in these situations? Can we show a real mistake somebody made, for example, last quarter? And if you kind of follow that mindset, your conversations with your stakeholders, they help you to switch from that content dump to something that designs behavior that helps your learners do their job better, faster, and sometimes in a more enjoyable way. That's also very important.
Yeah, and that, in education, what that may mean, and I know, some of the educators in our network do that. Instead of introducing a topic in the traditional sense with that flow, they go in with, once it's been introduced, they'll talk about the most common mistakes that they've seen their learners make vis-a-vis a concept, or the most common misconceptions they have. So you show, even in a math thing, topic, what are the mistakes that learners tend to make? It's so much more relatable, and so you sort of flip it like that. That's very helpful, Kate. I'm looking at the time, but I do want to get to something exceptionally interesting that you said again on your LinkedIn, and you're going to have many more LinkedIn followers after this whole. But you said we instructional designers spend hours fine-tuning a single module trying to make it perfect. So I challenged my perfectionist brain, 15 minutes to create a growth mindset post, a coffee break, and 15 minutes to optimize it using cognitive science. Now, I know I can speak for everyone attending this. We want to know how you design a micro module in what looks like 40 minutes. If your coffee break is 10 minutes, what is this process, Kate?
Well, since we don't have much time, I can share the full guide. The link is in the chat. But I think the real insight wasn't in how fast I worked, it was in how differently I approached the work. And I'm a perfectionist, and I don't really like it. I try to help myself become a person with that good enough mindset. And actually, what was surprisingly effective for me in that particular experience was that I didn't start from content. I started from what kind of the mental shift I want to make happen. This is very related to what I've already mentioned. You don't need to aim for perfect phrasing or perfect something, perfect visuals. Just try to aim for cognitive impact. What are the hooks that will make your learners feel it's relevant, it's resonating, it's meaningful? Try to make learning experience like a flow. It should, it should be a narrative with something in between, some action cues. And of course, you always need to keep in mind that nobody wants to get extra information about anything. We live in such a overloaded world, but we are so very open to getting something that unlocks our speed, helps us be more effective in what we have to do in our regular life. Try to kind of reset your thinking in such a way, because this way you will switch from thinking, what else should I include, to asking, what's essential to move your learner forward. That's fast. When you kind of think about the time and I invested into that experience. But again, that's not about I worked faster. I just tried to change the vision. I trusted structure. I cut fluff, and yeah, you don't need more time. That's the conclusion out of that challenge. You just need to ask yourself better questions at the start. What's your learners need? What can make them hooked? What can help them do something better, faster? And there is no a perfect solution for that. There's some actionable solution you can provide them with.
I love the fact that, Kate, you didn't talk about an instructional design model. You're saying change the mindset first, ask better questions of yourself. And, it's about thinking differently. It's not, following a model and which will get you the best design possible. It's about deeply empathizing with your learners and being grounded in the context that you're designing for. I love that. I had another question, but maybe we'll look at if we have time during the Q&A section. I want to pass it on for what we call speed consulting. Miriam, over to you for that section.
Thank you, Kate. This has been so interesting. You've given me so much to reflect on, both in my journey as a learning designer and also as a teacher. So thank you very much. I can't wait to sit with everything that you've shared so far after this call. So just for context for everyone else, we're going to be doing something called speed consulting, which is where we have a member from the LDC community who needs some quick advice about a real life situation that they have in their workplace. So our speaker for today is, our LDC member for today is Shreya, and usually in these cases, our speaker, Kate, provides some quick, concise advice or potential solutions rather than a deep dive. It's more like a focused advice. So Shreya, would you like to unmute and share about what's going on? Give us
Yes.
some
Hi,
context.
Kate. It's been really nice listening to you, and we've spent about the past 3 months developing modules on 7TAPS. However, our context of use is different. So a lot of the examples that you gave right now were from L&D as the context, but we work for the social impact sector in India, where the learning that we create, and this particular specific project was for master trainers who train students in technical training. So students who are learning to become welders, become mechanics, and become, get absorbed in the training space in India, in the industrial space in India. It's institutes for them, and we were trying to create very short modules to develop soft skills in these trainers. And what we realized was that and where many of such organizations faltered is that they're eager to measure learning impact, but eventually they have to just fall back on how many people viewed the lesson, how many people completed the lesson, what kind of MCQs did they answer, etc. Because engagement time is just that much. So do you have any recommendations on how learning transfer, learning impact can be measured better in such situations if you've deployed microlearning?
That's a great question, and evaluating the impact is as important as trying to design to get that impact, of course. There's no universal rule, I'd say. It always boils down to what context you operate within. I think that the most important thing is to try to track whether people actually apply what they've learned. And one thing that helped me personally is to stop thinking about learning transfer as some kind of black box and look for some small and observable shifts in behavior, something that's grounded in real context. If you're utilizing 7TAPS, you can send a follow-up with submit card, some form card, and give learners a real-world scenario, like what would you do in this situation? How would you respond? How would you act? And ask them to respond. Thus, you are not testing their general knowledge, you are looking for signs of application. And then you need to compare it to how they might have responded before the training. Of course, you need some initial assessment to get that data. It might be not that easy, but this idea, this concept can get you closer to the real question. Do people actually do something differently? And maybe that's the only outcome that should matter. Because, open rates, completion rates, engagement rates are quite popular to measure learning, but they do not tell you anything about whether people actually apply it in their life. When it comes to business environment, that's a bit easier because we can connect training activities to some results, thinking that this particular microlearning series about handling customer objections led to decrease in those objections not resolved. In some decentralized environments, that may be a bit more tricky, but if you have that connection to your learners, if you are delivering spaced microlearning series to them, this kind of assessment, pre-assessment, something very friendly, something very casual, like this is the situation, this is another situation, how would you act? And finally, as a follow-up, not right after your training stops, but after some time actually passes, like 2-3 weeks, 1 month, you actually can change that knowledge retention and real signs for knowledge application.
Thanks, Kate. That was very useful. I do have a small follow-up to that, if we have the time. Miriam, would we have the time?
I think I'll tell you what, let's do some of the questions we already
Sure,
have for Q&A. If we have a few minutes at the end, then we can come back to this.
Yes,
How
yes,
about
yes.
that?
Thanks, Kate.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. That was very useful.
Thank you, Kate. I second what Shreya says. That was a very, very helpful answer to the question. And actually, there was a question from one of our participants today, Mani, who asked a similar question about tracking the impact of learning, specifically microlearning, when you don't have an LMS. So I love the examples you shared using 7TAPS specifically, but if you could give some thoughts around if someone isn't maybe using 7TAPS or doesn't have an LMS in general?
Well, for example, with 7TAPS, you don't need to have an LMS because we provide not only content creation, and the tool is not designed just for content creation. We also provide the delivery. And that's the very important aspect of microlearning. It's not just about short content, it's also about frictionless access for your learners. It does not make any sense for your learners to go through endless clicks when they need to access something that will take just a few minutes to go through, right? If you host your microlearning experiences on your learning management system, which most learners hate, let's be honest about it, if it takes lots of clicks for them to get the training, your microlearning moment actually is blurred. So with 7TAPS, we try to make that training look like not training at all. For example, we have delivery through SMS, through WhatsApp, through Slack, MS Teams. So in this way, people don't even feel they go through training. They just get some actionable content that helps them do something. And speaking about the measurements, that's kind of a black box for evaluating whether your training activity was successful or not. And again, it all depends to the context. The things I prefer to evaluate, first of all, is confidence check, confidence lift. Ask your people before any training activity how confident they are in applying something, how confidently they would respond to this situation, and if they have any idea of how to respond. Then deliver that training spaced over time. Good training experience, good learning experience never happen in a one-off scenario. Adults simply don't learn through one activity. They need some reinforcement. They need time for immersion, for reflection, for practice. And that's why in 7TAPS we have learning paths that are based on spaced learning technology. And finally, at the end of your training activity, again, ask your people how confident they are now, how they would respond to this situation, what they would do, and compare the results. Currently in 7TAPS, you only get data, but soon we are going to have AI analyze the initial responses and the final ones, and give you the insights about what's the change, what you should pay your attention to. Probably there is some need for additional training. If we speak about something more practical, you can run some assessments, you can run some quizzes, trying to understand and realize what level of knowledge your learners had before training and after the training. That's quite simple. If we speak about real application, the most effective way is to, again, see how they react in real life. In corporate environment, it's mainly about getting some feedback from people's managers and trying to understand, is there any trend in changing people's behaviors? In more complex contexts, you can provide some continuous follow-ups with some examples, with some advanced assessments, real-life stories, asking people to respond, and not just to respond, but describe why they would respond in such a way. So I can't talk endlessly actually about it, but again, if you start designing your microlearning or any training experience with the intention to change somebody's behavior, you need to track that behavior at the start, and you need to find the way to track that behavior at the end. That's kind of a the only way to understand whether it has worked or not.
Thank you. That was so insightful. I have so many follow-up questions, but we also have some questions in the chat box. Shraddha actually asked something that I think a lot of us think about and discuss in the LDC and in the learning design communities in general. Where do you see the role of something like structured learning or online courses or platforms like 7TAPS with answers it gives us?
Could you probably expand on this because I didn't quite get the question?
Shraddha, would you like to expand on
Yeah.
the question?
Sure. Actually, this came up, Kate, in so we have a WhatsApp group where most interesting conversations happen. So we ran a poll in the community asking people how they would like to learn if they had 5 minutes. And although a lot of members, voted a real life example, a how-to checklist and stuff, a lot of members actually said they just go to a preferred AI tool, mostly ChatGPT, Claude, and ask that tool to sort of give them the answer in 3 bullet points. So the question really is, how do you see the role of structured learning in general, whether it's online courses, it's 7 tabs or whatever, fitting into a future where AI gives us just in time, very contextualized answers?
Yeah,
Do you,
that's a
yeah.
great question. Yeah, now I got it. All right, so you get that answer from ChatGPT, those 5 bullet points. They help you in the moment, but they never shift how you think, decide, how you act. They are always surface level. They are not strategy level. And that's the crucial point, because training only has real value if it changes behavior. And actually, that's the core goal of any training activity in an organizational environment. Like, you want your people either acquire a new habit of doing something or change the way they're doing something right now. And that's exactly where structured learning or microlearning still matters. It will matter forever. But of course, it should be initially designed for action and for recall, not just for information dump. I'm currently working on some document for our sales team, and just yesterday I put for them a kind of pyramid where at the bottom you have that knowledge layer. It could be some documentation or traditional training or ChatGPT or any other LLM. It just gives you access, but it does not guarantee that anything happens afterwards, that it's just some knowledge you get at the moment. The next layer is a kind of application support layer. And that's exactly where spaced reinforcement, nudges, quick reminders, just-in-time learning live. This is where microlearning live, especially 7-Tabs microlearning. This is where microlearning gets really powerful and effective. It helps bridge the layers. It helps bridge the gap between knowing something and not just doing something once, but acquiring a habit of doing that regularly and applying it thoughtfully and confidently. So at the top, you have that layer that we can call the outcomes, behavior change. That's the core goal, right? So lots of times I've faced situations when a company would have that great first layer with all the content, and now ChatGPT can give us a feeling that we have exposure to all the knowledge in the world. But when it comes to the application layer, there's that middle layer that also should be in place, that we should care about. When we assume that somebody knows something, it never equals that somebody will do something. In fact, that's rarely true. So microlearning, structured learning is exactly something that helps you bridge the gap.
Thank you so much. That was so helpful. I know we're running very short on time, but there are a couple of questions that are wonderful and I think will resonate with people on many levels. One is from Lillian, one is from Ajit, who works with underprivileged school students in rural India. So Ajit was wondering, how could microlearning be effective in a scenario like that? Or I guess to make it more general for everyone, I think a scenario where learning can be a little unstructured or there's not the typical learning environment.
And I think especially in the foundational literacy and numeracy context. So talking about rural parts of the country, and if you're trying to teach foundational literacy and numeracy, could microlearning be effective then?
Well, when we speak about some foundational knowledge, that's not the case for microlearning. You cannot, for example, learn medicine or, I don't know, French language through microlearning. But you can support that learning through reinforced materials that help you with some specific ideas. And if we speak about some comprehensive knowledge, in many cases, it boils down to trying to extract exact moments behaviors, some shifts that can help you build a series of meaningful touch points. Like probably it will sound vague, but just consider you never can teach somebody how to become empathetic through just microlearning, because that's a broad topic. But if you think about this within that framework of touch points, really standalone behaviors inbuilt, then probably, first of all, a person needs to understand what the empathy is all about, what signals you that this person is empathetic, what kind of situations you can face to actually evaluate whether you or somebody else is empathetic or not. Then there could be a microlearning touch point with different scenarios in which you need to vote or choose. Again, was it the right behavior, or should it be kind of addressed differently? So if you take something more fundamental, there's always there are always some moments that you can deliver through a series of meaningful touch points. And in fact, it can be more effective than just throwing the whole information to people, hoping that they will absorb it and, finally apply it in some way. We actually have a client who worked with people in rural areas in Latin America, and they taught them some business savvy, some economical efficiency skills. And it was not like this is the fundamental knowledge of how to become more business savvy. It was about one little skill at a time. Like, here's how to do that. Let's go through this micro intervention. Next time you get something else. And again, the mindset I've been talking about throughout this webinar, you need to think about the behavior. You need to think about the impact that your learner are willing to get from you. What's the one thing they need to do differently after going through that training? What kind of experience it could be if you deliver one activity, then another activity, then one more activity, then something to reinforce on what's been delivered previously. And if you think in such a way, you actually can discover that microlearning can work in so many situations. Probably just not something too technical, not something that requires real practice. For example, you cannot train somebody to become a good surgeon simply through microlearning interventions. You need practice. But for soft skills, for lots of comprehensive training, it could be turned into powerful microlearning interventions if you are into that mindset of changing behaviors one step at a time.
I love that. I know we're over time, but if it's okay with the two of you, can I just ask one last question? Because it ties very nicely to what you said about behavior. We had another question from Money, who was asking about how could you convert learning needs, especially the behavioral ones like ownership or collaboration, into effective microlearning content that actually does shift behavior?
What kind of topic could you repeat, please?
So let me paste the question in the chat box as well, so it's there for all of us. So how could one convert the learning needs, especially behavioral ones like ownership or collaboration, into effective microlearning content that would actually shift behavior?
Well, ownership or collaboration is something too broad to turn it into microlearning as it is. What's the context? What exactly that particular person, learner, should do after that training? What are the micro steps that the learner can make to finally become more collaborative or anything? Behavioral change for adult, as I already mentioned, does not happen overnight. You need to provide some background. You need to ensure you provide them with good and bad examples. You need to provide them with very relatable scenarios in which they can see themselves practicing that collaboration skills or ownership, and explain, for example, why this type of behavior won't be described or evaluated as the collaborative one, why this can be described as the collaborative one, so they can see the difference, they can feel the difference. Then provide them with some materials for self-assessment, very low stake, not something to make them feel they are being assessed, but something something that helps them apply what they learned through the previous modules. Like, this is the situation. What do you think about this? Why? How do you think? Is that person right or wrong responding like that? What would you do? And here's what your colleague did. How would you evaluate it? So that they could learn from some real scenarios, tailored to their world, to their problems. And again, shifting behavior is never one-off activity. It should be spaced. It should involve some feedback from you as the content creator. So for example, in 7Tabs, we have those types of cards in which you can get responses from your learners. And it's not just like they simply share something. You should take their responses to create something else for them. If you, for example, get 10 answers with the same mistake or with the same attitude, in the next 7Tabs module, you can address it. And the beauty of 7Tabs and microlearning is that you can iterate quickly. You can adapt your content to what your learners actually want, to what problems they get through trying to apply what you deliver to them. And I think that's the point many instructional designers actually miss when they think about microlearning. The iteration is the power. If you can experiment, if you can adapt something on the go, it's just so, it makes everything so very relatable. And that's the true engagement you get from your learners. It never comes from, interactivity, games, or flashy something. It comes from understanding for your learners that somebody respects them, somebody respects their context, somebody respects their time and effort they are already putting into absorbing your content and trying to apply it. So this is the way microlearning can really help you not just become more effective in terms of how fast you respond to your organizational needs, but also how engaged finally your learners, your students, your employees get.
Thanks so much. I'm just going to take it looking at the time, and I just want to thank everyone who's been with us. All the people, you stayed 10 extra minutes, and we'll close in another 2 minutes. So thanks for staying with us. And that was incredibly helpful as you summed it up, Kate. I think this was such a perfect question to come in the end, because you said collaboration as a skill. It's not really a skill. You have to think about what is the skill, what are the behaviors in that context that you want to see. So are you talking about classrooms? In which case, think about exactly what you want the students to be able to do. By the end of it. And if it's in the workspace context, like so it's great that not everything, I think it just sort of really helped understand how to approach microlearning as a pedagogy as well. So thanks so much for sharing that, Kate. I want to close this with just some quick announcements so that this journey with microlearning doesn't end here. As we know, there's only so much that we can learn by just listening to experts like Kate. So we're going to meet again next week, look at some of the key insights that have emerged from this conversation with Kate. So we'll create a short summary for you and really look at those insights as practitioners and say, how do we begin to apply it in our learning design? So have we already applied it? If yes, then what are the struggles in applying some of the things we learned about, and how do we do that? So that's what the learning meetup is, really a practitioner space. So a bunch of practitioners coming together to share their experiences and processing the insights that emerged through these conversations with experts. So that's happening next week. Do join us for that. Miriam, if you could just paste the link of this on the chat. So do join us. And also want to make a quick announcement about our blog. So LDC, this community, also runs a blog, especially to capture and spotlight stories from the Global South, stories on learning innovations. And this time we are partnering with Global Science of Learning Education Network and focusing on a theme called Learning Science in Action. So if you have applied principles from learning science, it could be cognitive science, behavior science, neuroscience. If you applied principles from learning science into your learning designs, do write the blog. So you can apply, submit your entry for a 1,000-word blog piece. And our blogs are sort of read by our members, which are about 5,000 educators and learning professionals across 38 plus countries. And this time in partnership with Global Science, even more countries. So do apply for blog. And the way to do that is actually, you'll shortly see a post with the link to apply that on our LinkedIn. So you can follow us on LinkedIn, and very shortly you'll have the submission details for this piece. Just want to close it with a big thank you, Kate. I know how busy you are, as an entrepreneur, consultant, you're also teaching at Stanford. And with all of that, just to come here with, your amazing insights and experience across sectors in education as well as the corporate enterprise learning, and sharing all these amazing stories and insights with us. Thank you so very much. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I just want to share, we typically these spaces bring people, like-minded people who are interested in similar topics together. So we leave the room for an informal conversation. So about 10-15 minutes, if you want to know other people who are attending this event, you can just stay back and we'll begin a very informal networking connection sort of session in about 15 minutes for 10-15 minutes. Kate, anything you want to say as we close this session?
Nothing. If you would like to stay connected, I just have dropped the link to my LinkedIn profile, and I try to post as much as I can with sharing lots of actionable insights. And I'm hoping that this session has inspired you to try microlearning, or probably to do something differently if you are already working with something microlearning related. Yeah, just here for any questions if you have them.
Awesome. So stay back if you want to know who are the other people attending this event. And if you want to leave now, I'm pasting the link of a short survey. Mind you, we read every single feedback, every sentence that comes to us. It's helped us evolve as a community and also make these sessions better. So please do leave your feedback for us. And thank you again, everybody, for being with us today. Thank you so much, Kate. Bye-bye.